I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the brutal murder of loving father Dan Markel, a man who lost his life because he wanted to be in his children's lives. Here's the story. Dan Markel, a celebrated law professor and loving father, was shot execution style in his Tallahassee garage on July 18, 2014, in the middle of a vicious custody battle with his ex-wife, Wendy Adelson, who was trying to move their children to South Florida. Prosecutors say the real motive lay not with Wendy herself, but within her family. Charlie Adelson, her brother and a wealthy Miami area dentist, orchestrated a murder-for-hire plot to end Markel's resistance and relocation and assure full custody and control for his sister. In November of 2023, just days after Charlie was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation, Donna Adelson, his mother and Markel's former mother-in-law, was arrested at Miami Airport moments before boarding a flight to Vietnam. She now faces identical charges: first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation, accused of funding and coordinating the lethal plot rooted in vengeance and control of Dan's children. And now the trial has begun, and the rest of her natural life hangs in the balance. Donna Adelson, we've been talking about her for years, and now the trial has finally arrived. It took a while for her to be charged. It took 10 years for her to be charged, but now the trial has arrived. And we've seen Donna in many different circumstances in the last year or so, and we've got to see and hear her voice through the years in some recordings, etc. There's going to be a lot of focus on her. There's going to be tons of focus in the courtroom because she's the one on trial. And the jury is going to have to judge her. And we believe that at some point she's going to testify in this case as well. So what I want to do right now is take a look at Donna Adelson in different points of time, under different circumstances, speaking and talking about things connected to this case and connected to her life. Take a look.
Dear Mom, I know you are upset by the verdict, but the anger directed at me is not justified. I don't know how much anger. We don't.
Mrs. Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen. You're scared. No, don't be scared.
I don't want to give it to you. Why do I have to give this way? Why do I have to give it to you? I'm sorry, remove for you.
I didn't know there was a warrant. How would I know that?
Well, we wouldn't have been able to take you if there wasn't something in place.
So aren't they supposed to inform? Aren't they supposed to inform me if there was a warrant?
You want to try to drink some more water? No? No. Okay.
I've gained more than a third of my body weight here. The diet is all carbs, no protein. All of a sudden I felt a hand go up my back, like from the top of my butt, up my back. This girl said, "You like it?" And I said, "Get out of here." And I started to scream, and she ran.
So these are all moments leading up to this trial. You know, the arrest, the phone calls, the call to Charlie where she's caught on the open line being recorded. So we got a flavor for her, and there wasn't necessarily a great reaction from the public to her. For many, there seemed to be a sense of entitlement, and she felt like she was better than everyone else. People got that feeling, whether it's true or not. That was the reaction many people in the public got. But now she's going to be inside of a courtroom, and she'll be observed during the course of the trial, where she's accused of masterminding a murder. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation. and it's about the defendant. What does Donna's demeanor reveal? Right? The way she comports herself inside the courtroom. Here to help answer that question is creator and host of Grizzly True Crime on YouTube, Gisela K, and former state attorney, Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Arenberg. And Dave also knew Dan Markel, the victim in this case. Thank you both for being here. I want to play right out of the gate here some of the video, and you'll hear what's going on in the courtroom, showing the way Donna is acting during part of the case, during inside the courtroom, full view of the jury, obviously. Let's take a look.
Why did you take this photograph?
For the darkened area on his forearm.
Why was that of significance?
That is consistent with stippling.
What is stippling?
Stippling is being close contact to a firearm that was discharged, and it's going to be the unburnt gunpowder and gases that leave the barrel of a gun at a high velocity, and it will tattoo or stain the skin.
State's Exhibit 24, please. Is this another effort to capture that stippling that you observed?
Yes.
No further questions.
The matters that we've discussed at sidebar concerning emotional responses, I do feel it is important at this point. Mrs. Adelson, when the testimony is occurring or the evidence, I know you may have a natural reaction, but as best possible, you need to control your reactions concerning any head movements, any expressions of disagreement, or any emotional outbursts. The jury must decide this matter on the merits, on the evidence. Do you understand this? Very well. I do not wish to do this in front of the jurors at all, but it's very important that you are able to control your emotions. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
All right, let's bring back in our guest, Gisela K, Dave Arenberg. And even there, as the judge is admonishing her in a nice way, she's still crying. Gisela K, what are your thoughts about this demeanor during the autopsy testimony regarding her ex-son-in-law, who she didn't like?
Was she crying though? I was looking hard to see if there's any actual tears. I can see that she's visibly shaking. I can see all sorts of things, but to me it goes along with her curated image for this trial. I mean, she's got the little cardigan on now. She's just a sweet little granny. And this is what experts in coercive control call poor me syndrome. To me, it looks like she's crying because she feels sorry for herself and not actually for Dan Markel and the testimony that's happening there. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm just really glad that the camera person focuses on her at key moments like this.
Absolutely. It's part of what the jury can see as well. Dave Arenberg, what does Donna's demeanor reveal to you?
She's like her son, the maestro. She thinks she's pulling the strings, the heartstrings of the jury. I think the jury's smarter than she thinks they are, because she never cried, never showed remorse, never cared about Danny before. She called him gibbers. She despised him. And when she was caught trying to flee the country on that jet, well, you saw the video, she was like, oh no, this again. Like, she has no remorse for Danny. She hated him. If anything, she feels sad by the fact that he is putting her through this again from the grave. So this to me was an act. I saw some still shots of her looking over to the jury, casually looking over to see if they were watching her performance, because that's what I think it was, a performance.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm really surprised. But, you know, we know the story, the jury doesn't. So maybe a jury coming in could be potentially influenced by the sweetness of this old lady who is just so distraught that her grandchildren's father was murdered in such a harsh way. Gisela, did you expect this today?
I really didn't, because most of the time she actually looks quite angry. Throughout the jury selection, she looked angry. Here and there, she pivots to, you know, from that sweet granny who's just shivering and crying to looking, side-eyeing the jury and seeing if she's influencing the middle. So I did not expect what I saw today, but it is fascinating nonetheless, and I'm looking forward to see a lot more of it.
And Dave, do you think this is the purposeful theme of the defense, is that she loved Danny?
For jurors who may not know the backstory, yeah, I guess. It's just so bizarre because I know what you know, what Gazella knows. She hated him. And for this to be recast as a caring granny who just mourns the loss of her son-in-law, it just makes my head explode. I was shocked by the whole opening, by her demeanor, but I do think it makes sense if you think about it in the context that her son, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, tried to pull one over on the jury, tried to pretend he was someone that he was not, and the mother seems to be doing the same thing.
All right, great news, Gisela K. Dave Arenberg staying with us. Coming up next, what is the evidence against Donna from before the murders?
The defendant told Wendy Adelson in emails that Dan Markel has not beaten the Adelson family yet.
Matriarch of the Adelson family gets arrested.
This is terrible.
Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law, Dan Markel.
Prosecutors say a bitter child custody battle was the motive for the murder-for-hire plot. Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
Now that the ship is really sinking fast, blood doesn't matter that much.
The Matriarch Mastermind Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
I want you to answer the question. What was the most important part
of the divorce for my mom?
Yes.
It says here that for her it was relocation.
Right there, that little piece. That's the alleged motive behind all of this. Donna Adelson wanted her grandchildren relocated and her daughter relocated to South Florida, not up there in the sticks of Tallahassee, 480 miles away. No, down in South Florida, where we are. That's what prosecutors are alleging here. So what is the evidence in the case against Donna? Take a listen to the prosecutor here talking about some of the evidence they believe they have that proves that Donna Adelson was pulling the strings and was the mastermind.
The night of the murder, she went to Charlie Adelson's house to pick up the payment for the murder. And when she arrived, Charlie Adelson said that his parents had just been at the house and that Charlie Adelson had the money for her there. Law enforcement was able to corroborate this claim with phone evidence showing that Donna Adelson went to Charlie Adelson's house the night of the murder. This defendant added Catherine McBanois to the payroll at the Adelson family's dental practice, the one that she kept the accounts for, the defendant kept the accounts for. And the defendant started issuing her regular checks from their business account every 2 weeks, despite the fact that she did not work there at the time. This undercover agent is posing as a blackmailer. He hands the defendant a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper is a news article about Dan Markel's murder. And written on the piece of paper is a phone number and the amount of $5,000. He tells the defendant that he knows the Adelsons are taking care of Katie, and he's basically there to blackmail to get more money out of them or out of her on Rivera's behalf, to even things out because he knows they're taking care of Katie. He never says Charlie Adelson's name or anything about Charlie Adelson to Donna Adelson. The defendant then puts the piece of paper in her purse and walks away without ever looking at the piece of paper because she knew exactly what it was about. Charlie Adelson was convicted in November of 2023, and within hours of his guilty verdict, this defendant began to plan to flee the United States to a country that she could not be extradited from in order to avoid being arrested for Dan Markel's murder.
Some of this evidence potentially very compelling, but there's something about all that evidence. It's all conduct and things that Donna Adelson did and said after the murder of Dan Markel, which brings us to the next question in our investigation. What is the evidence against Donna from before the murder? Right? This is a murder for hire plot. So what is the evidence against Donna that she's part of this plot, the planning of all of this before the murder? Here to help with our investigation, creator, host of Grizzly True Crime, Gisla K, and former state attorney, Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Arenberg. Dave also knew Dan Markel, both Harvard guys. Let me play a little bit more from the opening statement and then analyze some of this pre-murder evidence to see how compelling it actually is.
You will see that this defendant conspired with her son, Charlie Adelson, who solicited his girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, to get this murder done. Charlie Adelson wanted to hire someone to kill his sister's ex because his mom was stressed out over all of the problems his sister was having with her ex-husband. McBanois said Charlie painted a picture that Wendy's ex was this terrible man causing his mom so much stress that she couldn't sleep or eat. McBanois agreed to help him and ended up recruiting her children's father, Garcia, and also Rivera to kill Dan Markel. The defendant told Wendy Adelson in emails that Dan Markel has not beaten the Adelson family yet. She let Wendy know that the Adelson family is a team and they are trying to win. Donna Adelson suggested in her emails several bribes to get Dan Markel to agree to relocation, like plane tickets, paying for her grandson's education, and the defendant even suggested offering Dan Markel a $1 million bribe to allow the relocation. And the defendant said that she would never, never, never give up and never stop fighting for Wendy and the boys to be relocated to Miami. And she never did. Law enforcement noticed a distinct pattern of communication surrounding important events or dates in this case. The phone calls always went from this defendant to her son, Charlie Adelson, and then from her son, Charlie Adelson, to his girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, and then from his girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, to the shooter, Garcia, and then back the other way, like train cars. They only seemed to touch the car directly in front and directly behind them.
Great opening statement in explaining that part of it. But Dave Arenberg, how compelling is the evidence and the conduct relative to Donna before the murder? Not the flight and everything afterwards, not the payment the night of, but everything that they allege happened before the murder.
She's key to the motive. The motive was for her. She wanted the kids, and she's the one with the phone calls who seemed to orchestrate this. But you're right, that may be the weakness of the prosecution's case. I mean, it is telling, though, that the night of the murders, the money came from Donna Adelson. That's not something you do without planning. Not only that, the money was washed, it was moldy, and so she took money laundering literally. So you'd have to believe that she knew nothing about this, even though the son was clearly motivated by something, to help his sister? The mother was pushing him all those phone calls, and then the money came in on the night of the murder. So I think there's enough there when you combine that with everything else we know. But admittedly, Vinny, if the defense decided to make this into a case of accessory after the fact, that could be a good strategy. I don't know if that's exactly where they're going. They seem to try to say here that she is not guilty because the state cannot prove its burden. I think a better strategy would be to lean into the accessory after the fact. Yes, she did it. She helped after the fact, but she's not being charged with that. She's only being charged with the murder itself.
Gisela, what are your thoughts about Donna Adelson's conduct and the evidence of her conduct before Dan Markel is shot and killed in his driveway?
I think from the emails and the $1 million offer and even organizing a TV repairman to go to Wendy's house on the day that Dan Markel was shot, that shows she was orchestrating a solution to a custody battle. But yet she's the grandma. It's not her kids, it's her grandkids. So those emails that they are starting to show is already very powerful indirect evidence to show, yes, motive and to show just how much she despised Dan Markel. But I think we're going to learn even more during this trial about the digital forensic evidence. Can you imagine her Google searches and just other things that we haven't heard of yet? I think it's going to show quite a lot.
Dave Arenberg, I like the way.
Vinnie?
Go ahead, jump in there.
Vinnie, do you remember the custody motion that was pending at the time of the murder? It was a motion by Danny Markel to stop unsupervised visitation between the kids and the grandmother, Donna. That was it. That's what pushed her over the edge. That motion never got decided because then he was killed.
Yeah, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. Gisela, you know what I love that the prosecutor did is that analogy of the train cars, because that gives me a visual that, the conductor up in the front doesn't touch the caboose, but touches other trains or cars that will touch the caboose. And that's basically what the allegation is, that it goes from Donna Adelson down to Charlie, John Gotti, to Sammy the Bull, to the people who actually end up taking out the target.
I think it's a very powerful analogy that the state used that will stay in the jury's minds and that show pre-murder call patterns and post-murder. So I think that is definitely a very good one that you mentioned there.
Yeah, and it seems part of what they're going to lean into, Dave, is the lack of contact, right? That she is not speaking with Luis Rivera. She's not speaking with Katie McBanoa. She's not speaking with Sigfredo either. So she's speaking with her son, like a lot, like every day.
And she's speaking in code. I mean, even after the bump, and I know that was after the murders, but after the bump, it's still about the TV. She calls Charlie, said, "This is about us, the two of us." Wow, okay.
I love that.
How'd you know that?
That's a great statement. That one is good. That one I love.
Yeah, and she can't really explain why she was talking in code. Is it because she's worried about a wiretap from the Latin Kings? The Latin Kings are good at a bunch of things. Wiretapping, not one of them.
Not one of them. Great job, Dave Arenberg, Gisela Kay. Make sure you check out Grizzly True Crime covering this story and all the other big true crime cases. Great to have you both here. Up next, does Donna's defense make sense?
This is
I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the murder for hire of loving father Dan Markel, the victim of a hit set up by his ex-wife's brother, and now prosecutors say his ex-mother-in-law was pulling all the strings. Here's the story. Dan Markel, a respected Florida State law professor, was gunned down in his driveway in 2014, an execution-style killing that stunned the academic and legal communities. As investigators peeled back the layers of his bitter custody battle, a disturbing family dynamic emerged. At the center were his ex-wife, Wendy Adelson, and her mother, Donna Adelson, whose deep involvement in Wendy's personal affairs raised suspicions. Prosecutors allege Donna orchestrated a murder-for-hire plot with her son, Charlie Adelson, to eliminate Dan and free Wendy to relocate with her children to South Florida. Prosecutors allege emails and secretly recorded conversations suggest Donna was the family matriarch, pulling the strings, pressuring Wendy, managing finances, and expressing chilling resentment towards Dan. Though Wendy has not been charged, her closeness to Donna and the family's coordinated actions have drawn sharp public scrutiny. Donna now faces charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation, and the rest of her life is in the hands of a jury who must decide if Donna Adelson is a killer. You know, I've been watching trials, obviously, for years, decades here just at Court TV, and then before then as a prosecutor. When you look at a case in a trial, the prosecutor's opening statement is so important, right? Because he or she is laying out the framework for the evidence. They have the burden, the evidence that they believe will prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. And you want to be very direct. You really want to be, you don't want to be subtle. There's no room for that. You've got to say, this is what the evidence is going to be. Here are the witnesses I'm going to call. Here's what they're going to say. So you get it in their minds, you get them working already. On the other side, for the defense, you see a range of approaches for an opening statement, sometimes very direct, right? Like Karen Reed's first trial, very direct. Second trial, not quite as direct, right? You defense attorneys, they have no burden of proof, so sometimes you got to flow with the way the trial goes, but you can always sort of glean some sort of theme and where it looks like this defense is really heading in the way that they are confronting these allegations. So let's take a listen to the opening statement for the defense for Donna Adelson.
This case is really a lot about theory and motive and not evidence. The state has a theory, and for the past 9 to 11 years, in fairness, probably 9 years, they have told the whole world that Mrs. Adelson was the reason that this happened. Mrs. Adelson was the reason that this happened. They've told this story, and it's outrageous. It gets people's attention. This woman wanted to take away the father of her grandchildren for the rest of their life because of relocation that happened a year ago and was done and over. And at the end of the case, because there's not going to be evidence that she did this, keep an open mind. Listen to all of it. We're going to ask you to find her not guilty of every single count. Thank you.
And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Does Donna's defense make sense? Let's bring in our guest here to help answer that question, former law enforcement officer and host of Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King, and Joel Waldman, host of the Surviving the Survivor podcast, has been covering the story from the beginning. Okay, I'm going to play a little bit more of the opening statements just to get a little more of the meat in front of us, and then let's kind of pick it apart and see if this defense makes sense. Let's take a look.
She is a normal person, just like all of us. She's kind, caring, loving. She cares more about people than she does about herself. You've heard a lot about how she hated him. She said some ugly things during the divorce. Pretty foul things, actually. But you're going to learn through the evidence why that was occurring and how she was actually interacting with Danny. They're two very different things. The evidence about the $3,000 a month, I have that here on this board. $3,000 a month. Charlie Adelson gave $2,000 a month, and he instructed his mother, for reasons you're going to learn in the trial, out of his business account to put her on payroll. She worked for him, and she paid that money. It's this man's money, not Donna Adelson's.
All right, let's bring back in our guest. What do we think of this? Claudia, she's kind, caring. Look at her in the courtroom. She's like everybody's grandma.
You know, Vinnie, who is like everybody's grandma? The woman that you had on your show earlier. That is everybody's grandma. This woman who wanted to bribe Dan with $1 million to give up the kids, wanted the kids to wear Hitler Youth uniforms to upset him. That's not really everybody's grandma. So I think as the evidence comes out and the jury sees all these things that Donna was doing, they're going to realize that she's not like every one of us, and she's a little different, and she does care about people, a very few people in her circle.
Joel, I also sort of felt that we're pointing the finger kind of at Charlie here and Wendy, like Donna's going to go after the kids, it looks like. Does that make sense?
I mean, does it make sense? No, but nothing in this case makes sense. And, was this an effective opening statement? I think was the original question. And I got to tell you, I was in a courtroom for Charlie's trial. And when Dan Rashbaum espoused this double extortion theory, essentially also including a layaway plan with the Latin Kings, I mean, I literally got a laugh. But today, inside that courtroom where I was, once again, 3G in Leon County, Tallahassee, everyone was scratching their head, essentially saying, what is Jackie Fulford even saying here? Yeah, she's not like everybody's grandmother. This woman orchestrated this hit. They talk about how she's this loving woman. We haven't really seen that at all. One of the things that really, really bothered me personally, because I had become friends with the Markells, is that she appropriated the name Danny, which is those who are really close to him. They call him Danny Markel. And then Jackie Fulford just began calling him Danny. And I looked over at the Markells, and it was just kind of disturbing, to be quite honest. But, just back to what you were asking about, it sounds like they're going to throw everything at the wall, including Wendy and Charlie. She conceded to Charlie's guilt, which we can get into a little bit more, and anything to save Donna, including throwing the two kids potentially under the bus. It's getting ugly right now.
Is there any chance that Charlie comes in and says, and Claudia, I'll ask you, that Charlie comes in and says, yeah, my mom didn't know about the double extortion plot, and I was just telling her to pay the money, and I lied to her. Is it possible that he comes to save his mom?
I mean, anything is possible, as we said in this case, so that could happen. I just don't think it will, though. I think he's going to come in and tell what truth he can. Whether or not people are going to believe him, that's the real question. So I'm not sure whatever he says is really going to have that great of an effect on the jury. And I think if he does come in and say, yeah, I did it, she didn't know, that's not really believable anyway. So I don't see that working out.
Joel, this is really like a rebranding, right? You're rebranding this woman. She doesn't look like she looked back then. You look at her in the bump and you look at her here, it's two different women. And she got very emotional today during the autopsy part of the presentation. Joel, what are your thoughts of that?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at her here sobbing, and it went on. And the most astounding part of this to me, I was sitting 2 rows behind Phil Markel, Shelley Markel, and Ruth Markel. And Ruth had to leave at this point. She knew the pictures were coming. Shelley just keeps her head kind of positioned, looking at her lap. She will not look up. And there's a monitor right here where we're sitting up to the right. And Phil, I love the guy. He's just stoic. He's kind of like a father figure to me. And he looked up and he looked down. I could just feel the heartbreak. And then I'm hearing crying, and I look over to my left, and it is Donna who's getting her back rubbed by her paralegal. And it was so kind of disruptive and insane that when the jurors left, Judge Everett instructed her, look, this case cannot be tried on emotion. If you can't control your emotion, we're going to basically kick you out of the courtroom. But it was almost like a moment where Donna realized, hey, I did this. I killed this guy. That's the impression I got.
It was bizarro world today. All right, guests are staying with us. Still to come, is there an innocent explanation for Donna's jailhouse interactions?
Man, just kind of locked up on her out there for no reason, but they kind of loosening her up now.
When the queen come through, y'all better move back. Cardi B is back in the courtroom, facing civil allegations for allegedly attacking a security guard.
The Cardi B assault trial. Coverage next week following jury selection on Court TV.
Brian Walsh, accused of murdering his wife, Anna.
She wrote a children's book about her husband's death. Now she's accused of killing him.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
Man, just kind of locked up on her out there for no reason, but they kind of loosening her up now. I feel the tension release. You feel the tension release there, Ms. Adelson? I feel that.
That's Donna Adelson being transported to Leon County from South Florida, where she was arrested. So she didn't get out on bond, so she's been locked up. And when you're locked up, you're living in a jail with other inmates, right? Take a listen to this part of the prosecutor's opening statement.
Law enforcement received information from women who said that the defendant, Donna Adelson, was offering them bribes in exchange for false testimony in this trial. They said Donna Adelson promised them money, housing, veneers, prescription drugs, if they were willing to testify that Catherine Magbanua told them a completely different story about the crime than the one that she would be testifying to. One informant was even able to show law enforcement a script, a question and answer session for a direct examination in trial that Donna Adelson herself wrote, and that Donna Adelson wanted this informant to memorize and come into court and perjure herself by reciting it to you here in trial.
Veneers. All right, that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Oh my goodness. Is there an innocent explanation for Donna's jailhouse interactions? These alleged bribes, this note, this script, communications, etc. Still with us, helping us with our investigation, former law enforcement officer, host of the Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King, and Joel Waldman, host of the Surviving the Survivor podcast. Veneers, Joel. Did you fall out of your seat in the courtroom when you heard that?
I'll be honest. I was, I'm always doing 10 different things, and I turned to whoever was next to me, and I said, "Did I just hear what I thought I heard?" I said, or what Sarah said, and they said, "Yeah, you sure did." And I'll tell you what, John Singer is probably one of the smartest attorneys we have on our show. And at the end of my show tonight, he stopped everyone and said, "Listen, the most important thing that probably happened today was Sarah Catherine Dugan mentioning this in these opening statements. There are going to be handwriting analysts that come in on both sides here. They're on the witness list. And if that is in fact a script that Donna Adelson wrote in her own handwriting, and this is a woman who wanted her daughter to dress the kids like Nazis because she said to win at any cost. But if this is her handwriting, John Singer, whose opinion I take very seriously, says it is game over. There will be a conviction. The jurors will not be able to see beyond this. So this is quite possibly one of the newest and most important pieces of evidence in this case, in this trial.
Claudia King, is there a potential innocent explanation, or is there a reason to not trust these inmates?
I think the only innocent explanation is if we're doing drama class, so that's probably out. I mean, there's always a reason not to trust inmates because quite often they're there to get a deal, they're getting something out of the testimony, so there's always that possibility of jurors not believing them. But I think that letter or that script is key because if that does match her handwriting, then I think it is game over. I agree with that. And this behavior, it goes right along with her pattern of never, ever, ever give up and manipulate every circumstance to get what you want. So it falls right in line with who we believe she is.
And the other thing, Joel, it's consistent with some of the other allegations of her behavior. You know, the reaction to the bump. She's always talking and doing things, and it's consistent with the allegations. Like there's always a way that she can control a situation that she doesn't like, and she has to talk about it. The open phone call, about finding the country without extradition. She speaks a lot, and I think this. For me as a juror, I generally hate jailhouse informants, but it's consistent with her.
Yeah, 100% consistent with her. And look, one of the most credible witnesses in every single trial so far, and he testified today, Luis Rivera, the Latin Kings gang member. That's the reason Charlie Adelson has to live in South Dakota, because the Latin Kings have green-lighted this guy for a hit. But I mean, again, it's a ruthless family. They don't appear that way. They don't look that way. It doesn't look like a killer. That was something else that came up during the voir dire process. The state said, what does a killer look like? And the implication was they don't look like Luis Rivera. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they look like Donna Adelson. And while we have Luis Rivera up there, by the way, Vinny, really interesting and very subtle. Luis Rivera on the stand today for the first time ever pointed his finger at Wendy Adelson. He used her name. He used to say the lady, but today he actually said Wendy Adelson was the one who basically told him through Katie Magbanua that it was time to go, put this hit out on Danny because Danny was leaving town. And man, all of a sudden, you've got Wendy in the crosshairs, you have Charlie back in the crosshairs, and Harvey also with the the defense throwing him under the bus. So what's going to happen now? Anybody's guess.
Yeah, and that was a big development for me, Claudia, the mentioning by Luis Rivera of Wendy Adelson by name. Now, it was a moment of, I don't know if it was triple or quadruple hearsay, the alleged statement, right? It was the ultimate game of telephone. Would not be admissible against Wendy. Catherine McBanama would have to testify about that statement. But to me, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world for Donna Adelson, because it's clear this was a murder for hire. The question is it Charlie and Wendy, or is it Donna and Charlie, or is it Donna, Charlie, and Wendy, right? To me, that's kind of what this jury has to figure out.
Yeah, and I think it is the whole family. It's a family affair that they're doing here. I think what the prosecution did that was great, though, was mention that whole train cell phone information in the opening statement, because that then does make it clear, okay, yeah, maybe Donna didn't talk to Luis Rivera, but that's not how it normally works. So I think that was a fantastic play by the prosecution. And yeah, I think Wendy could be next. We'll just have to wait and see if mom is convicted, if the next day she's making flight arrangements to a non-extradition country.
Joel, before we go, we only have about 20 seconds left. Was Harvey in the courtroom? Is he not permitted in the courtroom because of sequestration? And anyone else there of note?
Harvey was in the courtroom today, and Wendy, at the very end of the day, showed up with an entourage bigger than Taylor Swift travels with, and she was hanging out at one end of the hallway. But she will be likely the first witness up on Monday. I got to tell you, Harvey looks really out of sorts. I heard an interesting story. John Laura, who is Wendy's attorney, literally went up and said, "You got to have this notebook with a pencil. You got to just write things down," because he was looking sort of mob-like at one point and then out of it at another, so they wanted him doing something.
We're out of time, but thanks so much, Claudia King, Joel Waldman, Surviving the Survivor, and the Strong Enough podcast. Donna Adelson likes to talk. It's in her DNA. Also in her DNA is a sense of arrogance that she is smarter and wiser than everyone. And in the end, that's why I believe she will testify. That's also why I believe the jury will not necessarily like her. The question is, will they believe her? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.